Have you ever pondered how the current state of the economy is impacting the average family? Let's dive right into the heart of the matter. We are in a time where the US inflation rate has rocketed to a 40-year high, standing at a staggering 8.6%. To put this into perspective, this is the highest it's been since the early 80s, a time when the world was vastly different from what we know today. The implications of this are far-reaching, affecting the price of everyday items, from the food on our tables to the roof over our heads. Even the cost of commuting via train isn't immune to these increases. With this significant rise in the cost of living, it's not surprising that job security has become a growing concern for many. The issue of inflation is more than just numbers. It's about the ripple effects on our lives, our families, and our communities. As we delve deeper into this issue, it is clear that this economic state is not without its consequences. Inflation, that seemingly invisible force, is making its presence felt in many areas of life. It's like a sneaky thief that subtly saps the buying power of your hard-earned dollars. Let's take a closer look at how it's affecting us. Firstly, our grocery bills. A trip to the supermarket now costs more than it did a year ago. Fruits, vegetables, meat. The prices are going up across the board, making it harder for families to put a wholesome meal on the table. Next, we have housing. Whether you're a homeowner or a renter, inflation is pushing up the costs. Home prices are rising, and so are rents, making it increasingly difficult for many to find affordable housing. Then, there's the commute. Train fares aren't immune to inflation either. They're climbing, putting additional pressure on those who rely on public transportation to get to work or school. But what about our wages? Well, some businesses are making cost of living adjustments to try and keep pace with inflation. These adjustments aim to offset the rising prices, but they're not a magic wand. They might help, but they can't entirely curb the impact of inflation. As we can see, inflation is not just a statistic on a page, it is a reality that is changing the way we live. As if the rising cost of living wasn't enough, there's another side to this inflation story: job security. You see, as companies grapple with the economic impacts of inflation, they often resort to making cuts, and that can mean job losses or wage stagnation. It's a tough reality that many are facing, making the employment landscape more precarious than ever. Take, for instance, the recent case of John Deere's union employees. After a prolonged strike, they managed to secure a contract that included a 20% wage increase over 6 years. A victory, yes, but a hard-fought one that underscores the lengths workers may have to go to in order to keep pace with inflation. Then there's the reintroduction of cost of living adjustments, a measure designed to offset inflation. But these adjustments, made every 3 months, can be a double-edged sword. While they can help workers keep up with rising prices, they also fuel further inflation, making the whole situation a bit of a catch-22. Inflation, it seems, not only affects our wallets but also our livelihoods. So, where does this leave the average family in the face of inflation? Just to recap, we've discussed how inflation is making a significant dent in our pockets. The cost of living is on the rise, and it's not just about the price tags on our groceries. It's the roof over our heads, the cost of commuting, and the fear of job cuts that are keeping us up at night. Imagine a family dinner table where the conversation revolves around the increasing prices of bread, milk, and veggies. Or consider the stress of a parent worrying about covering the rent or mortgage as housing costs skyrocket. And then there's the daily commute. The price of a train ticket isn't what it used to be, making the journey to work an expensive affair. But it's not just about the here and now. Inflation is also about job security. As companies tighten their belts to cope with rising costs, the threat of job cuts looms large. So the question is, will our wages keep up? Or will we find ourselves working harder for less? Inflation is more than just an economic term. It's a challenge that families are grappling with every day. While the situation may seem dire, there are ways families can try to stay afloat during these inflationary times. Let's explore some solutions that could help. Firstly, budgeting. A family budget is more than just a tool for tracking income and expenses. It's a way of taking control of your finances and planning for the future. It's about being aware of where every penny is going and finding ways to make the most of what you have. Whether it's cutting back on non-essential items or finding cheaper alternatives, a well-planned budget can help families manage their money better in the face of rising costs. Secondly, savings. Building an emergency fund is like having a financial safety net. It's money set aside for unexpected expenses or for those times when the cost of living gets too high. It's not just about saving for a rainy day. It's about having peace of mind, knowing that you have a buffer to fall back on when times get tough. Lastly, side jobs. In the age of the gig economy, taking on additional work can be a viable way to bring in extra income. Whether it's driving for a rideshare service, selling homemade crafts, or offering freelance services, there are many opportunities out there for those willing to put in the extra hours. Inflation may be a tough opponent, but with careful planning and determination, families can navigate these challenging waters. It's about being proactive, seizing control of your finances, and finding ways to make your money work for you, even when the economic climate is harsh.